I would like to welcome you to our monthly webcast in the VAT Insights series. My name is Diana Kurz. I work at Deloitte in the indirect tax service line, and I'm joined today by Lukas Hechel and Simon Parsons, both of whom I would like to extend a very warm welcome to.
Hi, Diana.
Hi, good morning.
So, who are you? What do you do? And what do you think about VAT? Lukas, if you would like to start.
Yeah, fine. Hi, my name is Lukas. I'm a VT director at Deloitte based in Munich. And I like to wear a little bit of a technical hat on my VT head. But today we have a very technical topic, and therefore I'm accompanied by somebody who has really the technology knowledge about to share. Simon, nice that you see and that you are here with me today.
Thanks, Lukas. So my name is Simon Parsons. I'm a director based in Berlin within our tax technology practice. So my primary area of operation is VAT compliance and technology and processes which are needed to support taxpayers.
Okay, thank you both of you very much. Due to the high demand for our Presence Breakfast event now in February, March, we want to take another look at the topic of e-invoicing in this webcast today. The Federal Council has given its approval to the Growth Opportunities Act, meaning that e-invoicing will now be mandatory in the domestic B2B sector from 1st of January 2025 in Germany. The law contains two staggered transitional provisions for issuing electronic e-invoices. However, domestic entrepreneurs will have to ensure the receipt of e-invoices from 1st of January 2025. This raises several questions for entrepreneurs and members of tax departments, and certainly for you too. How can companies best prepare for e-invoicing? How can I prepare for it? What deadlines do I need to observe? Which departments in the company are affected? How can the new regulations be implemented smoothly during ongoing business operations? On the basis of these and many other questions, the two of you, Simon and Lukas, will now address the topic with further questions and provide us with a roadmap that can safely guide us through the changeover in the company. Before we get started, however, I would like to point out that the webcast will be recorded and can be accessed via our website. No personal data will be stored, and with that, I would like to hand over to both of you. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Diana. Here we go. What are we doing to do today? First, we will start briefly with the VAT in the digital age regime that will be most likely come in the future, because this is the matter of the e-invoicing, let's say it that way. Then we look in deeper at the Growth Opportunities Act. It's called in German the Wachstumschancengesetz, where actually the e-invoicing rules were implemented here in Germany. And then we would take a look on what does this mean for you, for your company, to implement e-invoicing rules in Germany. And at the end of the day, we will take a short outlook what will happen in the near future when we're talking about digitalization of VAT. As you may know, let's kick off with the VAT in the digital age, or VIDA initiative of the European Commission. This is a draft that is currently published and should be an amendment of the EC-VAT directive. The first draft was published in December 2019. It is highly discussed, and currently we are talking about that, or it's likely that in the next ECOFIN in May 2024, further developments on VIDA are to be executed. VIDA has three pillars. The main pillar we are talking about today is the TRR. It's the digital reporting and recording. Here, it is regularized, or should be regularized, that an e-invoicing is issued, and based on this e-invoicing data, electronically transaction data will be provided to the tax authorities in a structured format. So TRR is more or less the matter of digital reporting, and digital invoicing. So, but as I said, VIDA has 3 pillars. The pillars 2 and the pillar 3 are also very interesting, but we leave it aside for today. One pillar is the single VAT registration, meaning that in the future it is only possible to have one VAT registration all across the European Union, and that you can comply with your compliance obligations in other member states using OSS and IOSS regimes. Here, only recently, the negotiations on single VAT registrations are far more mature than on DRR. So we are expecting that this will come for sure in the near future. And the second or the third pillar on VIDA is the reform on taxation of the platform economy. Here also the experience of other recent law changes in the VAT area, especially the e-commerce package, shall be implemented on the platform economy. So it is very interesting to see what will happen in the future. The current draft is highly interesting when it comes to electronic formats. Of course, it is structured. Of course, we have near-time reporting with saying that a transaction should be reported to the authorities within 2 days, and other very interesting drafts. We have to closely align and closely look what happens here in the near future in the development of the VIDA initiative. When we are talking about e-invoicing, we always have to keep in mind that there are several different models of e-invoicing. As you can see, Germany has chosen the model on the left, meaning there's no transaction to the German government. So contrary, for example, to Italy, where a hard clearance model is operated, in Germany, you must not provide the e-invoice data to the German authorities. This is also the reason why Germany was able to implement e-invoicing rules such quickly as it happened now. Because the German authorities were not obliged to create a portal, a governmental structure to process e-invoices. Contrary, for example, to the Italian model, and also contrary to the example what we experience in other EU member states at the moment. So Germany choose for the time being, this is important to emphasize, because they left a back door open that in the future it is possible that a clearance model will be implemented. So Germany choose the interoperability model, whereas if you have already experience with e-invoice across Europe or across the globe, there are other models operating hard clearance in Italy, for example, and soft clearance in especially India, Egypt, or LATAM countries. And in addition to clearance models, we know some countries with real-time reporting where actually not the invoice data has to be provided to the authorities, but the whole transaction data. After setting the scene, we move on to the developments of the German Growth Opportunities Act, so the Wachstumschancengesetz, where actually the e-invoicing rules in Germany are now implemented. This was first to all of us kind of surprising that indeed Germany is not really known as fast mover when it becomes a digitalization. Indeed, Germany intended in April 2023, when the first draft was published, intended to implement e-invoicing structures in Germany. And these e-invoicing structures were implemented in a kind of elegant way, meaning that it's not that just the definition of the invoices was changed. As you can see, throughout the legislation process, it was a little bit back and forth, and not only on the e-invoicing. We had some changes to the drafts in e-invoicing, but the major changes to the draft of the Growth Opportunities Act were with regard to complete different areas. And at the end of the day, the 22nd of March 2024, the Federal Council approved the law, and on 27th of March it was actually announced in the Federal Gazette. So it became law on 27th of March. Let's take a deeper look on the e-invoicing rules that are now implemented in the Growth Opportunities Act. As I told, it was introduced in a quite elegant way, meaning that the German paragraph or section 14 of the German VAT Act, that is actually ruling on the invoices, says, okay, from now on, I define two possible invoice formats. I'll define an e-invoice, and all other invoices that are not to be qualified as e-invoice are so-called other invoices. Meaning, the German authorities just took over all existing rules on invoicing and changed the approach, what is an invoice. And now, for the time being, or as of 1st of January 2025, the prioritization of paper invoices is history, because in the future, e-invoicing are prioritized, and all other invoice formats that are not an e-invoice are ancillary to that. So this is the main rule, that more or less an e-invoice is defined. I'll come back to the definition a little bit later on that. Important to know that e-invoicing only applies to German domestic B2B sales, meaning the supplier and the beneficiary of a service or a supply of goods must be domiciled in Germany. Only then the e-invoicing rules apply. And at the end of the day, the e-invoice is defined based on the European norm 16931. A little bit of spoiler. This EN 16931 will be stressed a little bit today, because it's the central format of the e-invoice. So, what's e-invoice? E-invoice means a machine-readable structured format that enables for automated processing. Meaning, all invoice formats that don't fulfill this requirement are so-called other invoices. Meaning, other invoices are paper invoices, meaning other invoices are PDFs, even though if they are sent via email, because technically a PDF is just an image. It's not a structured format. And other invoices are also electronic invoices that don't comply with EN 16931. This is important to know. What is an e-invoice? What is another invoice? Because the different legislative processes are derived from those two definitions. The e-invoicing rules do only apply for domestic B2B supplies. So the supplier and the recipient must be established in Germany. So either the registered office or the business management or the fixed establishment that is involved in the supply has to be also on the seller side and on the purchaser side, has to meet these requirements. Only then the e-invoicing gets mandatory. put it the other way around. If one of those two parties, either supplier or beneficiary, are not established in Germany, the e-invoicing rules, the mandatory e-invoicing rules, do not apply. Of course, you can issue e-invoice on a voluntary basis, but under a different fact pattern. When we talk about EN 16931, maybe the technical experienced under the audience saw, okay, this was not totally exactly described. EN 16931 is more or less just the norm that says, okay, what's the format? The format itself is PEPL 3.0. For the time being, we stick to that the invoice must comply with EN 16931. Please excuse this slide blurry. It's just easier. Again, EN 16391 is a European standard on invoices and provides a syntax according to a European norm of the European Union. The invoice issuer and the invoice recipient can agree on other formats under specific conditions. This is important to note that, yes, EN 16931 is leading, but it's not the last word. Because you are able to agree, we come back to this at a later stage. So, what is important to know when you want to take another e-invoicing format, because maybe you have already processes in place. The invoice issuer and the recipient can agree to use another format. The only important thing to know is that when you use another format, the data points that are ruled in EN 16931 have to be extracted from the data set you use. So it is, as long as it is possible to translate from your data set used to EN 16931, then you're totally fine. And under these conditions, also current EDI structures can be accepted. And this is one important thing that was amended during the legislative process, because in the first draft, EDI was not allowed. So, and here the stakeholders, the lobbyists, applied massive pressure on the government to allow EDI, because EDI is very well known in many companies in Germany, and therefore they asked for an amendment of the draft with regard to accepting EDI also in the near future. So what does the introduction of e-invoicing mean in terms of time? When we talk about 2024, so now paper invoices don't need consent, and all other invoices, also including electronic invoices, need the recipient's consent. And here is the important trigger. As of 1st of January 2025, e-invoicing do not longer need the e-invoice recipient's consent. So you are able to raise an invoice as e-invoice without the recipient's consent as of 1st of January 2025. All other invoices need the recipient's consent. With other words, if anyone in the world is funny as of 2nd January 2025 and says, hey, I have everything up and running, I want to use e-invoices, and raises an e-invoice, the e-invoice recipient cannot refuse this e-invoice. He must accept it. he must be able to receive and to process an invoice. Because as of 1st of January 2025, you are obliged to be able to receive and to process invoices. And no, because this is a question we experience quite often, the German authorities did not regularize how you must be able to receive any invoice, how you have to put an invoice in your invoicing, in your regular invoicing processes. This is not ruled, so you are free to choose. The only important thing to know is that as soon as you receive an invoice in whatever way, you must stick to the German record keeping and archiving rules called GOVD. An invoice on whatever transmission or however it is transmitted must be recorded and archived as every other document you receive. And this is very important to know because the GOBD, the German record keeping and archiving rules, were updated recently, very silently, to be honest, beginning of April. So, and here definitely it has to be kept in mind that e-invoicing are also part of the German record keeping and archiving rules. So first thing to take with you, you must be able to receive and to process e-invoices as of 1st of January 2025. On the outgoing side, so since from when on you have to file in or to have to send e-invoices, it's depending a little bit on the structure of your business and depending a little bit of the format. At the very, very latest, after 1st of January 2028, you must send e-invoices. In 2027, you are able to raise other invoices if you are an SME, meaning your total revenues of 800K are not exceeded per year. And you have the supplier or the recipient's consent. Meaning larger businesses must be able to send e-invoices after 1st of January 2027. Meaning we have a 2-year transition period for us to prepare for sending out invoices. And this providing consent of the invoice recipient is the major trigger. Because as soon as your invoice recipient refuses to provide consent to other invoice, a PDF for example, you must either provide a paper invoice or you must provide an e-invoice, because only those two invoice formats are the invoice formats where no consent is needed. And here we are assuming that one of the big players in the German market will move before 2027. Because they say, okay, I have everything up and running for process e-invoicing on accounts payable side, because here is the leverage for automation. And so now I force my suppliers to provide only e-invoices. And then the suppliers of this big player are obliged to raise invoices already before the 1st of January 2027. My bets are on automotive. Other bets in the team are on retail, but for sure, one of the big players in the German market with enough market power will somewhere oblige their suppliers to raise e-invoices. And then there will be a lot of momentum to get e-invoices actually also supplied prior 1st of January 2027. Why? Because they just simply say, I refuse to accept your invoices unless they are invoices. And this is not that far away from reality, because what we already see now is that those big players require their suppliers do a specific invoice transmission, for example, to upload them in a portal in a specific way. So they have the power to go on that. And therefore, we assume that one of the big players will move and then force their suppliers for invoice. And then, of course, the German market will be dynamic. So please take 2 different dates with you. First date, you must be able to receive e-invoices as of 1st of January 2025. And at the very latest, unless you are an SME, you must raise e-invoices as of 1st of January 2027. So, Simon, this was the first introduction on what is the legal base on e-invoice. So, what do you think and what do you see from a technical point of view? What challenges do companies have? What chances are available when we're talking about e-invoicing?
Thanks, Lucas, for the legislative background. I think the core message to take is that e-invoicing is very relevant to German tax compliance at the moment. But it's not just a German topic or even an EU topic, it's a global topic. So I would ask myself, am I already involved in the implementation of e-invoicing in another jurisdiction, or have any of my colleagues been involved in such a project? How did it go there? What were the difficulties we faced? What pressure is this putting on our resource planning, not only within the tax team or the procurement team or IT team, but amongst all stakeholders? But I would also take a commercial view, in the sense of, who are you doing business with in Germany? Are your customers primarily businesses, so affected by the e-invoicing regulations? Or if you primarily operate in the B2C space, then as we're talking about mandatory structured e-invoices or B2B supplies, then regulatory changes will have less of an impact on your B2C business. So you can assess your business partners, where they're located, their type, the volume of transactions, also perhaps the attitude of your suppliers and your customers towards e-invoicing. What would they prefer from the commercial perspective? The next point or challenge you could face with the introduction of mandatory e-invoicing in Germany is IT related. So I would look at my IT landscape and not just the main ERP system, but also subsystems, whether it's a billing engine or a procurement platform. And of course, the landscape can vary between entities within one country, definitely across jurisdictions. So which exact systems and processes need to be adapted for which specific entities or VAT registrations of the companies within your group? Another challenge area would be that of data quality for tax purposes. So where does the data which populates your invoices come from? Some elements or fields of the invoice may not be held in your FI, in your general ledger. They might be stored in a subsystem, which adds complexity to your IT setup. You also have to consider whether the data you have is complete and accurate, and actually allows you today, theoretically, to prepare compliant e-invoices within the German regulations, which are also subsequently auditable by the German tax authorities. So the EN 16931 standard has 150 data points, but these can also be expanded depending on the country. So in Germany, we have the Ex-Rechnung format, which is commonly used in the business to government sales flow, and this has an additional 20 data points. So when you think about it, there are 170 data points which need to be populated in order to create and issue an e-invoice. So your master data needs to be of good quality, complete and accurate, and should flow in and out of your AR and AP processes in order for you to meet the demands of the mandatory e-invoicing law. Essentially, you want your customers to be happy with the structured e-invoices they receive from you. And on the other hand, you need to be able to read, match, and process the purchase invoices you receive and reject them if necessary. Because after all, there's no input VAT deduction from an invalid, non-compliant electronic invoice. So the tax department is a key stakeholder in e-invoicing because commonly, it's the case in Germany, the introduction, the mandatory aspect is processed in the tax law, but IT teams, naturally, procurement, sales, logistics have to work together to ensure that you're in the position to create and receive electronic invoices. Master data needs to be obtained and maintained. Somebody has to do it. Are there competing priorities or other initiatives within your company which prevent other stakeholders from tackling the issue of e-invoicing? And the final challenge I would like to highlight here is in introducing mandatory structured e-invoicing, the German tax authorities give themselves the opportunity to monitor tax compliance of German taxpayers in a more standardized, automated way. This means audits or specific queries are expected to happen more frequently and closer to the point in time when the transaction actually occurred. So again, our expectation, this external oversight will put additional pressure on tax departments or master data teams in terms of handling the new requirements in Germany. A small example, not every customer record will have the bank account details stored under its record currently, but in the Ex-Rechnung format, this is a required field, so work needs to be done to populate this field. But every cloud has a silver lining. So mandatory structured e-invoicing can be used as a catalyst to automate and digitalize your processes. So from 2027, you can be sure to receive purchase invoices in a structured format. So it's possible now to invest in an automated process which is based on this format. And this process can allow the content in the invoice from suppliers to flow seamlessly into your own business systems for matching, for approval, and it can eliminate more time-consuming aspects such as OCR scanning, manual review of the scan results, or even manual typing of invoice data into your procurement systems. So this can save on operational costs. And as customer and vendor master data improves to meet the more immediate real-time demands of e-invoicing, we hope you'll find that transactions can be given the right tax treatment, the right tax code first time, perhaps using tax determination technology, So this could mean overall the compliance picture of the entities within your remit improves naturally, which has the added benefit of making tax audits, tax inspections less exhausting further down the line. I mean, certainly we know the tax authorities are seeing e-invoicing as their own catalyst for automation, digitalization, and hopefully, it might mean an increased frequency of queries or formal audits, but it could mean they happen more efficiently, quicker than they currently do in Germany. And last but not least, a benefit from e-invoicing could be improved cash flow management. So if suppliers and customers are forced to invoice in a consistent and structured way, then the related approvals, payments should happen quicker, which could assist your own commercial imperatives.
And this is exactly what we experience, or what's the feedback of the big players I mentioned earlier, that they are keen to see their automated AP processes. So because all this time consuming and very, very difficult OCR processes, that you have different processes for different for different formats where you receive your invoices, that they will disappear in the near future, and therefore they can leverage a lot of those automation processes and on an accounts payable side. So moving forward, what are the factors to be considered when I talk, okay, I want to implement e-invoicing? So Simon now mentioned, okay, this is mainly technology driven. Yes, totally right. So how does the implementation of an e-invoicing system work practically, Simon?
The first thing, e-invoicing, digital, is a natural impact on your technology. You need to integrate the real-life legislative demands into business processes and systems, and doing so carefully to make sure that there are no unexpected risks or delays. And it's important to again highlight that in future we have e-invoicing. Today we have e-invoicing mandatorily. But in future we expect it to shift towards e-reporting in near real time. So in the end, transactions will need to be recorded accurately first time, and as with more efficient auditors, there is less time for retrospective review of transactions and less opportunity to correct errors before they are detected. And also commercially, technology matters because you want to receive compliant invoices from your suppliers and they want to receive them from you. So let's avoid arguments between supplier and customer simply because the invoices are not in the IT technical compliant format. And aside from this, there is a risk of disallowed input tax and administrative fines and penalties if structured e-invoicing are not received or sent properly. So technology is required to meet these legal and commercial challenges. And as he said correctly, Lucas, the digital records have to be stored and archived securely, retaining the authenticity of origin, the legibility, the integrity of content over many years. And the process for doing so has to be explained or explainable to the German tax offices if required. And in this context, technology is needed to maintain high standards of data quality, accuracy, and completeness. And there are several formats throughout Europe, so-called CIUSs, or invoice usage specifications, starting from the EN 16931 format, but expanded by more country-specific requirements. So in Germany, we have Section 14, paragraph 4, which governs the validity of a VAT invoice. But then this is supplemented with the structured invoice format with contact person, bank details, region. And let's say from experience, from intrastat reporting projects, region is a field which is not commonly populated, it's often neglected. But yeah, depending on the requirements of the e-invoicing, this field becomes mandatory. Therefore, process changes or even a project is needed simply to get the information you need from business partners. So here you need a strong, sound technology base to handle the demands of electronic invoicing and reporting. It also leads the opportunity for automation. The data is digital, can be handled again seamlessly within your processes. But as we expect stricter reporting obligations in future to continue to close the VAT gap within the EU, so there is a real need now to create a stable and sustainable technological base coping with these regulations in the mid and long-term future.
Yeah. Let's take a little bit deeper, or let's take a deeper look into the processes that are tackled by invoice. Let's start with accounts payable or incoming invoices. So currently you have different invoice formats. You have paper, you have PDF, you have maybe email, and maybe also already PEPL structures. And here we tried to provide an overview of what happens then.
So right, so basically from January 2027, structured e-invoices will be the only invoice type used, except for small value invoices or transport tickets. And they will require still their own separate process. So you need a corresponding IT setup. Now there are various opportunities or options on the market. It could be a third-party specialist VAT compliance service provider, or it could be from the ERP provider itself. But you'll need something positioned after the receipt of the invoice from your supplier, which will need to convert, one, the invoice into a format legible to humans so we can understand what's going on, but also to convert it into a format which can be consumed by your downstream systems. Now, you'll be receiving the invoice content digitally. So here you have the opportunity to carry out automated checks on the invoice and check that it's truly valid from the VAT perspective. And you can also, there's also the opportunity to check the content of the invoice and match it to your own master data, your own purchase order data, and even verify the tax classification employed by your suppliers. The latter would require the use of some sort of tax logic, provided either by an ERP add-on or tax engine or even AI. But essentially, on the purchase side, today when it can take months for a paper or PDF invoice to be received, scanned, reviewed and approved within all your systems, electronic invoices can be straight through processed and almost posted automatically with the input VAT recorded in the correct month or quarter. And this can save headaches further down the line during tax audits. But commonly, tax offices require input VAT to be shifted between years. And that can be time consuming and a real headache.
And on the bottom page or in the bottom half of the slide, we try to outline what departments in a company are affected of these processes. So of course it kicks off with an IT process to enable you to receive e-invoices, and then goes further in different departments where this e-invoice is processed according to your company standards. But we're not only talking about the input side, we are also talking about accounts receivable. So what impact does an e-invoice have on the accounts receivable side, Simon?
So here the big pain point is data quality. And we're not just talking about Germany, EU, Europe, but globally, because there are different country-specific requirements for the content of a sales invoice. So what needs to be included for VAT or GST purposes in the invoice? What fields are optional but preferred by your customer base to help them process the invoice quicker and for you to get payment quicker? What other invoice content is mandatory under commercial law or other regulations? So depending on the company, depending on where it operates, depending on the local regulations, you need to be able to consistently, over time, issue electronic invoices which are compliant and also can be updated to meet legislative changes. And again, there are different players on the market who can provide support in generating the invoices and transmitting them perhaps via the mandated government portals or transmission routes. But regarding transmission in Germany, the idea is you send it to the customer in a mutually agreed way. So how many customers do you have? How many mutually agreed ways do you want to agree with your customers? How firm do you want to be? So this means, from the German perspective, I mean, once you've introduced sales e-invoicing in one country, it doesn't necessarily translate into Germany. Plus, some points are open, but you can agree with your customers to a certain extent on the transmission format. So again, there's commercial negotiation required.
And this is important to keep in mind. The German law does not provide any transmission path. So you can agree with your customers how this data record gets from A to B. It can be a portal, it can be SFTP, it can be an interface, it can be email, doesn't matter. On the one hand, it's a great opportunity that you are free to choose, to agree also on the solution, how this should be transmitted and what solution suits your company's needs best. But what is always important to keep in mind that all those solution providers are not responsible for your data quality. So all big players and all smaller players in the market, that they have to be provided with a proper data set to generate e-invoices and to transmit it over to your customers. Or put it the other way around. So you are responsible to generate the accurate data sets. And this is the big challenge, as Simon already said. It's always coming about the master data or the data quality. So we had recently this presentation in Munich in presence, and here one of our attendees said, "Yeah, we are already invoicing a lot of governmental structures. So X-Rechnung is quite wide used." So of course, for them, getting their B2G processes onto B2B, it's not a big ticket. Of course, they have to cope with the accounts payable side, fine enough. But other companies that must not have B2G invoices yet, for them it's a complete new challenge. And when we look on those processes, the journey to e-invoicing and e-reporting, Simon, how you would get started in your company?
Yeah, well, first of all, I think the term journey is the correct word, and it's like every IT-related project. It's not a point in time, it's an ongoing process. So first of all, you need to define the relevant stakeholders, who needs to be involved in getting the data to the required standard, and adapting processes, systems, and human operating procedures to meet the changes. Then you need to understand the existing IT landscape, per entity, per jurisdiction, and then make a strategic decision. Do we want to go global, regional, country by country? Do we want to build our own e-invoicing solution, or do we want to buy one? What solutions on the market meet our specific industry needs or business flows? And then data quality is worth considering on its own. Again, it's checking existing completeness and accuracy of the master data you have, making efforts to fill in gaps in the existing fields, or expanding the questionnaires you send to vendors and customers when you onboard them into your systems. Here you can also identify areas for improvement, optimization. In implementation, you've got to connect the tool, the solution, seamlessly to your systems, and then test it within the project team, and also among end users who are actually making the generating the invoices, making or approving the financial postings. And it has to be monitored over time, because legislation changes, technology changes. Do you have to install an update? For example, PEPL 3 format has already had 4 amendments this year in 2024. But following this process, you're well placed to consider changes in other jurisdictions or future additional requirements in Germany or in the EU connected to the VIDA initiative.
So what are the key takeaways? First, please, if not happened yet, create awareness in-house about e-invoicing and e-reporting. So we do not know when VIDA is coming. Current rumors say 1st of January 2030. But VIDA will come. And with VIDA, cross-border e-invoicing and digital reporting will be on the tab. Then gather your stakeholders. It's not a tax project. It's not a pure IT project. It's a company-wide project of different key stakeholders that are involved in producing and receiving and processing invoices. And then define a vision where I want to be company-wide. Make it sense to have a global solution, makes it sense to have a regional solution. There is no right or wrong answer on this. It depends highly on your needs. And this is, we experience that one solution is perfect for company A, but is not the ideal choice for company B, depending on many, many aspects. So how will I tackle e-invoicing in the future? By what technology? And how can I ensure that this e-invoicing journey is up and running for the future? And also to provide a little bit of outlook. So in the German coalition agreement of 2021, there's already implemented that a standardized nationwide electronic reporting system should be enacted. Okay, this will not be happen under the current German government, but you see that also Germany intends to move towards a digital reporting requirement. And also the German Federal Ministry of Finance published already that a standardized electronic transaction-based reporting system should be implemented for national and cross-border B2B supplies. So even Germany is not known as first mover in digitalization. There are movements, there are intentions to do so. And we want to, last 1 minute, we want to spend to a draft of the Bureaucracy Relief Act. Here, because this all fits together. In the future, there will be shortened periods for tax accounting, for tax and accounting documents, such as documents should have now to be archived for 10 years, should be 8 years in the future. And also here, the digitization of tax and commercial accounting data should be prioritized. So also here, it should be easier to save your accountings in an electronic format. So this is current under draft, but will happen in the near future. And you see how the movements, or how also the German government is moving in going fit for future and digitalized tax reporting. Diana, we have some questions.
Yes, thank you very both of you. That was very informative. After your presentation, we know at least what an e-invoice is, who is affected by the mandatory introduction, what is meant by the EU EN 16931 standard, and which deadlines should be observed. However, during your presentation, I wrote down a few questions that I'm sure one or two of the participants asked themselves also. First one, is there any guidance available that describes the process once an e-invoice is received by a taxpayer?
No, there is clearly no guidance available, and this is solely in the sphere of the taxpayer to establish those processes. Again, always keep in mind that the national archiving and record keeping regulations have to be kept.
Okay. Simon, can you perhaps say something more about which data quality and processing is necessary?
Sure. So the data relating to your customers and vendors has to be complete and correct, so accurate, matching real life, to enable you to make the right tax decision, whether to treat the transaction and report it in Germany or elsewhere. So this means somebody or some bot has to obtain and maintain right data from your business partners, your suppliers and customers. So you need to adapt your internal processes and review them, adopt them to meet the additional demands from e-invoicing if necessary.
In this regard, we are all or often get the question, what happens for non-compliance? Indeed, a breach of the legal obligations to issue an e-invoice constitutes an administrative offense. So like parking in a prohibited zone, only much more expensive. We know, or the law knows, that the administrative offense can be up to 5,000 euros per offense. What's also possible is that expenses then are saved expenses are then absorbed, and an entry into central trade register what is indeed bad for further communication with the authorities. These legal consequences do also apply de facto for managing directors. So, in terms of time, I assume last question, Diana.
Yes, sorry, I have some technical problems. Last question from my side. When I look at the deadlines, one question remains unanswered or still remains. Why should companies act now?
I'll take this one. I think to be well placed or optimally placed for mandatory structured B2B invoicing and to avoid commercial disputes between your customers and your suppliers and reduce the amount of invoice rejections. This is why you need to act now. So it seems like perhaps a narrow topic, but it has very much business-wide implications. So a sense, yeah, adapting and continually monitoring your business systems and processes is essential to make sure you meet, each invoice a compliant standard, but also are in the position to benefit from the potential reductions in operational costs from increased automation in invoicing processes.
Okay, something to add, Lucas? Or
No, totally right.
Okay, a glance at the clock shows me that our time is up for today. Thank you very much for your participation, and of course, thank you both. Enclosed is another slide with relevant contact details. I would also like to take this opportunity to draw your attention to our next events. In the coming weeks, we will be devoting another English language webcast to the topic of e-invoicing and GOBD. The corresponding invitations will be sent out. If you have registered on our website, you will receive the invitation automatically. If you have any questions, please contact us at any time. Otherwise, we will see you here again next month for the German language edition of VAT Insights on 14/5/24. We look forward to a lively participation here too. Have a pleasant working day. See you next time. Thank you very much.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.